So coming up this weekend is going to be UFC Fight Night Namajunas versus Cortez, also known as UFC Denver, taking place in front of a crowd in Denver in what I think should be a pretty good card. Now, it's definitely not like the most stacked card that we have ever seen, but in my opinion, cards that are in front of a crowd are typically a lot more fun to watch, in my opinion, than fights that are in front of the Apex, which is little to no crowd. So I am expecting some fun fights. Elevation always makes things very, very interesting as well. And I'm just overall looking forward to the card. I think it should be a pretty good one. I did just get back from my trip away. If you guys didn't know, I have been away for the last few days, honestly, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It's quite amazing where competing in disc golf takes you, because it takes you to some very interesting places, of course. And I was away competing in disc golf over the weekend. Didn't play too badly, but we're back now to give my predictions for the card. Now, of course, there is the $10 per month We Want Picks premium membership, and if you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you can get a 3-day free trial, and you can cancel during that 3-day period. But aside from that, of course, it is $10 per month, and you get access to a lot of things, such as articles that I write every single week about non-UFC events. So I had an article about the LFA card last weekend, and I also have an article already out right now about the PFL card coming up this weekend, and just other events that are going to be taking place on the weekend. That's what I do for We Want Picks, but of course, Angelo and Jacob have their bets up there, and there are also a lot of tools that can help you make your own bets as well. And with all of that out of the way, let's kind of kick off into the card with Josh Fremd versus Andre Petroski. Now, I've already recorded a video, so I'm probably not going to laugh too hard at this one, because Andre Petroski, if you guys didn't know, he knocked himself out. He knocked himself out attempting a takedown against Jacob Malkoon, and that's not really the best way to lose a fight. It's definitely one of the ways to lose a fight, that's for sure. But aside from that, actually, in my opinion, Andre Petroski is kind of an interesting fighter, because I feel like he's got very good pure grappling for middleweight, but I don't think that his striking is all that great, and I think his wrestling is pretty decent. Now, I feel like his striking was actually kind of, I guess, shown by Gerald Meerschaert to be very one-dimensional, as in that fight, I know it's GM3, all Andre Petroski was really throwing were these massive hooks, and he was leaving himself wide open, but of course GM3 isn't, the best boxer in the world either. But the way that Petroski fights is he does throw massive winging hooks. That's kind of all he's really got on the feet to set up a takedown to then get his grappling going. And in this fight, in my opinion, it is just going to come down to, can Josh Fremd keep the fight on the feet? Now, I do understand that Josh Fremd in his own right is actually a pretty talented grappler, is also a wrestler as well, but I think that he will have the striking advantage here. I do feel like a lot of fighters in the middleweight division probably do hold a pure striking advantage over Petroski, but I feel like Josh Fremd isn't going to be able to defend the takedowns of Petroski. We have seen Petroski get down, in my opinion, better wrestlers than Fremd before in the past, and we have seen Fremd out-wrestled before now, albeit you could look at this Anthony Hernandez loss, and I don't really take any shame in that, because Anthony Hernandez has a very difficult wrestling style for anyone to deal with, and he took that on short notice. But he did get pretty badly beaten by Trayshawn Gore. I mean, that submission guillotine finish was brutal, and then of course he did lose to Roman Kopylov, but that is Roman Kopylov. I think it probably is potentially a situation where both of these guys are in a win or go home situation, and I do like Petroski in this matchup, but it is worth noting though, I have seen Petroski gas out before. We saw him slow down a lot against Gerald Meerschaert. He really, really did start to gas out towards the end, but so did GM3. And now that he's going to be fighting here in elevation, maybe if he doesn't get in the early finish, he could slow down again. But I do like Petroski here. I like him to find the submission, and his money line right now is he's actually the underdog. So, I didn't expect that. He definitely wasn't the underdog a few days ago, but I am going to pick Petroski here. I'm actually going to pick him to win by submission. Now we can move on to the next one. A fight that has been added to short notice, and I do feel like it is worth noting the short notice because of the fact that this is going to be at elevation. So both of these guys, to my knowledge, only accepted this fight last week, so they've only really had 2 weeks to prepare and quickly put together a training camp to then get on this card. For Montel Jackson, I feel like his motivation for accepting this fight is just because he's had so many cancelled fights recently. He is, of course, a guy that I believe has been given top 15 opportunities, is deserving of a top 15 opportunity, And unfortunately for him, it's just kind of all fallen apart, and he hasn't actually fought for over a year now because of all of these cancelled fights. And then for Damon Blackshear, I mean, I don't think Damon Blackshear has actually had a fight on a full camp in the UFC yet. Maybe the fight against Jose Johnson was on a full camp, but then he fought just a week later against Mario Batista and put up a decent performance considering he fought just the week prior. Montel Jackson has got big power for the weight class. He's a pretty big guy for the weight class. I mean, both guys are, of course, 5'10", but Jackson does have big power in the weight class. I believe still to this day, he has knocked down every opponent he's ever fought in the UFC, and he's also got a lot of knockouts as well. Damon Blackshear is a very talented grappler. He's got a twister submission in the UFC. Once he gets fights down to the ground, he is very slick. He can get things done. And he does have pretty decent wrestling as well. But Montel Jackson has shown pretty good takedown defense so far in his career. I think it's going to be, of course, a little bit of a striker versus grappler matchup here. And I do like Montel Jackson. He does just have that one-punch knockout power. As I said, he's a guy that's been given top 15 opportunities before, and at bantamweight, that's a really big deal because bantamweight is honestly one of the best divisions in the UFC right now. It's really, really stacked, and I think that Montel Jackson really could potentially prove here against Damon Blackshear on short notice that Montel Jackson is once again deserving of a top 15 opportunity, and that is why I'm going to be picking him to win by KO. Montel Jackson is minus 155 money line, and most people are picking him to win by decision. Now Luana Santos will be taking on Mariya Agapova, and a little bit of information has actually come out recently about Luana Santos's last camp. Now she did actually fight at flyweight for her debut against Juliana Miller, where she did win by KO, and then she actually had a fight, I believe on short notice, against Stephanie Egger, upper weight class at 135 pounds, 10 pounds above her normal weight class, and she missed weight for that fight. And it turns out she actually caught a disease while trying to cut weight. And that disease, I actually can't remember the exact name of it, but that disease is a disease that actually makes you gain weight. So she was trying to cut weight, but she had this illness that was making her gain weight, and she just couldn't quite make that 135 pounds, even though it is her natural weight class. She has kind of posted quite a few times now on social media. She's looking in shape. She's looking like she's going to make 125, no problem. And now she's taking on Mariya Agapova, who has had a lot going on. If you've been paying any attention to Mariya Agapova news or just MMA news in general, you may have heard, by the sounds of it, Mariya Agapova currently is without a home. She had a friend that tried to, sell her off. Just really, really weird, horrible things, unfortunately, for Mariya Agapova have happened to her over the last few months. And I just don't think that she's going to be able to beat Luana Santos because of that. Now, I actually think that Mariya Agapova does have some solid striking skills, but we have seen now time and time again in the UFC that she just does not have the grappling to get to kind of keep up, really. And Luana Santos, although she hasn't really showcased too much grappling in the UFC so far, I mean, I say that, and she beat Stephanie Egger, who is a judoka, and showed some good grappling there. I think that we're going to see Luana Santos now go out there and be offensive in the wrestling, be offensive in the grappling, and kind of just once again expose that big hole that is in Mariya Agapova's game. Agapova is a very dynamic striker. I think she's a pretty good striker, and Santos has proven that she is too, but I think we are just going to see Santos get the fight down to the ground. Sorry, guys, and I am actually going to predict Luana Santos to find a finish by submission. Santos is a very wide odds right now, minus 280. Most people are picking her to win as well. And now we have a very interesting fight because it's short notice. Accepted, I believe, just yesterday for Fatima Kline against Jasmine Jasudavicius. And I'm very high on Fatima Kline. I think Fatima Kline is really, really good. And now she's going to be coming upper weight class now to meet Jasmine Jasudavicius at 125 pounds on about a week's notice at Elevation. To kind of mention that as well. If you guys don't know who Fatima Kline is, Fatima Kline has very, very talented wrestling. She's got very, very good grappling. As you can see, a 2-weight class champion in Cage Fury FC, but she actually was scheduled to be on the Contender Series later on this year, and I believe she was training for that when she did accept this fight, so hopefully she is going to be near 100% for the fight. She does have a very good win on her record. This win here over Natasha Kuziatina has actually aged incredibly well, as Natasha has now gone on to find a lot of success in the LFA and recently turned away a very good opponent there in Giovanni Canuto. And prior to that as well, she was grappling a lot. She's got a lot of grappling experience. And she made her, I believe, amateur MMA debut when she was 19 years old. So she has been in MMA for quite a while, despite only being 24 years old. Now, we know who Jasmine Jasudavicius is. She is a savage. You know, she is a decent striker, but she has been outstruck before. We did see that Tracy Cortez was able to showcase pretty good boxing against her and was able to shut her down on the feet. We saw that Natalia Silva was able to shut her down on the feet. But I feel like this isn't a matchup where she's going to be shut down on the feet, if that makes sense. Because I don't see Fatima Kline as a striker really at all. I see her as a very good grappler and a very good wrestler. And if she was to beat Jasmine Jasudavicius, considering the elevation change, it's pretty much the same thing. Considering the elevation change, it's definitely going to probably require Fatima Kline to find a finish somewhat early, but I guess it's not really that bad for her to be accepting the fight on the upper weight class, and she won't really have to cut too much weight. But Jasmine Jasudavicius, she's very big for the weight class. She's a big flyweight, and she's going to be probably pretty difficult for Fatima Kline to take down. And I know everyone loves Jasmine Jasudavicius, but I am going to go for Fatima Kline. I really do believe in her pure skill set. When it comes to skill for skill, I do believe that Fatima Kline is actually the more skilled fighter in this matchup. So I'm kind of just hoping that kind of comes through, because her grappling is incredible. Her wrestling is incredible as well. We've seen it on the regional scene so far. She's been able to dominate a lot of opponents now, and I do believe that we are going to see that kind of come through here against Jasmine. But it's not an easy fight for her at all. This is a very low confidence pick, I will say. Jasmine Jasudavicius, although she is a very good wrestler herself, I think she probably would be better off to try and keep this fight on the feet. But I think that we're going to see the fight come down to the ground at some point or another. And I do think we're going to see Fatima Kline be able to make it happen. And to my surprise, on the odds right now, Fatima Kline is actually minus 133 on one of the sportsbooks bet online as I record this video. So maybe you could get Jasmine Jasudavicius as an underdog, but I do like Fatima Kline in this matchup. I do just believe in that pure skill set in this fight. And now we move on to another one. Josh Van fighting against Charles Johnson. And you guys did bring up a lot of really good points in the comments, because I was picking Charles Johnson, and I still am picking Charles Johnson as well. But you do need to consider the elevation quite a bit, actually, because if you do think about it, Joshua Van has been in training camp for a long time now and has been ready to accept fights for a long time. You know, he has had so many different cancelled fights, had that whole situation where Tatsuro Taira versus him ended up being Tatsuro Taira versus Alex Perez, and he was meant to fight Tagir, but Tagir missed weight, so he's been ready. He's been in camp for months now, just kind of training, being ready, waiting for an opponent to come around. But so was Charles Johnson, and both of these guys, as I did say in my early prediction video, are guys that if you are not a fan of, you should be fans of them, because these guys are the ones that want to fight whoever, whenever. These are guys that step up. You know, Charles Johnson really kind of made his name for himself in the UFC by being that guy that accepted short notice fights. I mean, he's been so active. He's fought 5 times in the last year and a half. You know, 2 times in the last 5 months, 3 times in the last 7 months. And so is Joshua Van. He's come into the UFC a year ago. He's fought 2 times in the last 7 months and has had 4 fights cancelled. That's the kind of activity that you do love to see. But when it comes down to this matchup in particular, and this is where things get very interesting, is because I do believe there is going to be a very big size difference in this matchup. I don't see Joshua Van as the biggest guy in the weight class at all. I think he's very small for 125 pounds, but that could be an advantage here because he's not going to have to cut as much weight to make the elevation, and he does have good cardio. He's been in training camp for a long time. His skill set is a boxer. But I look here at Charles Johnson, and Charles Johnson, you know, a few years ago, he won the Tiger Muay Thai scholarship. He won the opportunity to train at Tiger Muay Thai. He won the tournament in Muay Thai to get there. He's got a wrestling background as well, which we have kind of seen in the UFC. He has shown a very good ability to defend takedowns and get up. He defended 11 takedowns against Jake Hadley, attempted and defended takedowns against Azat Maksum. And in this fight here, I believe he would be very smart to mix it all up. I genuinely can see Charles Johnson going out there and taking down Joshua Van. We have seen Joshua Van take him down very regularly on the regional scene. You know, Paris Moran was able to take him down before he gassed out. Cleveland McLean was able to find success with the wrestling. Not as much as Paris Moran, but he still was able to. And all of these guys here just haven't really quite been able to find that same success. And I would actually put a lot of that down to Joshua Van is making rapid improvements in his career, and you do love to see it. But I think now coming in here against a guy like Charles Johnson, who is a lot bigger, who can mix things up on the feet and on the ground, and if I know for a fact that Charles Johnson is going to attempt takedowns, then I actually do like his chances in this matchup. So I am going to pick another underdog here in Charles Johnson. It's one of those cards, man, which could be pretty scary. But picking Charles Johnson as the plus 150 underdog. Josh Van is minus 170. I know Josh Van's got his supporters. I know people love Josh Van. I like Josh Van as well. But I think that it's just it's a tough matchup for him, I feel like. But maybe the short notice does benefit him, and we will see, of course, and we will find out on Saturday night. And Cody Brundage versus Abdul Razak Alhassan is another interesting one. As I feel like, once again, you could make a case for Cody Brundage, but I've kind of moved on from the belief that Cody Brundage has improved his striking, because I don't know about you guys, but every single Cody Brundage interview that I've ever watched outside of the UFC post-fight interviews, Cody Brundage is always talking about how he's improved his striking, he's been working on his boxing, he's been in the gym, you know, he's trying to get his striking up there. And then you go and watch his fights, and it doesn't look like his striking's improving. And then he has a matchup, which honestly, he actually did have the opportunity to showcase some striking against Bonacool. And although he did defend some takedowns there and didn't look too bad in the wrestling and the grappling, on the feet, he just kind of slid around and threw spinning kicks to the body, and just didn't really showcase any real, like, comfortable, controlled striking whatsoever. You know, he didn't really kind of do any fundamental striking. He was kind of just putting on a show for the fans, which is cool and all, but it almost kind of went like he went into that fight himself believing he wasn't going to win, you know? Just the way that he struck with Bo, because he just didn't really strike. So I'm like, man, like, how good is the striking really? And we've seen him hurt on the feet before. We've seen him make bad decisions in the past, like pulling guillotine all the time. Pulled guillotine against Rodolfo Vieira, and Vieira being the multiple-time world champion, jiu-jitsu champion that he is, turned that into an arm triangle for him. Cedricus Dumas was able to out-grapple him because he pulled guillotine so much. And then the DQ and the slam. But the slam is impressive, of course. But now I look to Abdul Razak Alhassan, and although Abdul Razak Alhassan is not the most technical striker in the world, I feel like he still is the kind of guy that could expose someone like Cody Brundage on the feet, because he is a little bit wild, he's a little bit sloppy, and I kind of draw attention to this fight against Claudio Ribeiro, where Abdul Razak Alhassan was eventually able to land that big power KO. Abdul Razak Alhassan, all of his wins have come by knockout. 11 of them in the first round. The only one outside of the first round was against Claudio Ribeiro in round 2. And he does have a very good judo background. A lot of people all the time talk about how Abdul Razak Alhassan is more than willing to stay behind after training has finished to help people work on their judo. So he's a very good guy to have in the gym. A very good teammate, of course, to have in the gym as well. But we've never really seen that judo actually really been utilized to full effect in the UFC so far, and I don't think he's really going to need it unless he needs to defend takedowns against Brundage or try and reverse something with a sweep or a trip or something. I think we're just going to see Abdul Razak Alhassan just land a big shot on Cody Brundage, and I think that's what it comes down to. Abdul Razak Alhassan is minus 150, Brundage is plus 130, and I do think that's pretty fair because there is a pathway for Brundage to win using that boxing, which he does have, to work in those wrestling and that grappling, but I just can't really subscribe to the idea that Brundage has improved his striking all of that much. So I do like Abdul Razak Alhassan to go out there and find the knockout over him. And now Christian Rodriguez takes a step up in competition, in my opinion, now in his new weight class against Julian Erosa. Christian Rodriguez, tough. He's a tough guy to really like. And I know that sounds really rude and disrespectful, but the truth is he did turn away a lot of prospects at 135 pounds. Very impressive wins, don't get me wrong, but the asterisk is there. You know, he missed weight against Raul Rosas Jr., and it's a real shame. And then he missed weight against Cameron Simon. A real shame. And then he goes up there at 145 pounds Did he win that fight against Isaac Delgarian? Probably not, but he got the decision anyway. I guess damage-based scoring, even though Isaac Delgarian had a lot of control and did slow down a lot, but it is what it is. He takes on Julian Erosa, and I worry about Julian Erosa, because he's been knocked out a lot. Like, a lot. I believe he's actually been KO'd 7 times, off the top of my head. 5 of them in round number 1. A lot of them aren't really, like, little KOs. You know, Padilla, I guess it wasn't really like a KO on the floor. It was kind of a standing TKO. Put him out. And then before that, Caceres knocked him out with that head kick, which was one of the better KOs of the year, just the way that he set it up. And then Sungwoo Choi, probably one of the more underrated left hooks in the game, put him down as well. But the thing about C-Rod that I have always been very impressed with is the fact that he does have very good boxing, but I feel like his pure grappling actually is quite underrated. And I actually think it's his short notice performance upper weight class at the time at 145 pounds against one of the bigger guys at this weight class in Jonathan Pierce that actually really showcased that, because it actually showcased really good defensive grappling and really good grappling. So if the fight does get down to the ground, which I think Julian Erosa will probably be pretty eager to take it there, I do think C-Rod will be more than happy to grapple. I think he will showcase some pretty good grappling. But on the feet, Christian Rodriguez is a solid boxer. And I do like his boxing here, kind of closing in the distance against the much taller guy, and honestly probably the much bigger guy, which is actually what makes this move to 145 pounds a little bit interesting. Now, I understand he missed weight twice, so he has to move up now, but in general, I still don't understand how he missed 135. He wasn't a big guy at bantamweight. Maybe something's up there, but I like his chances in this one. I like him to beat Julian Erosa. He does have solid boxing when the fight's on the feet. He does have solid defensive grappling when the fight's on the ground. We've seen it showcased before. He has showcased good grappling against a much bigger opponent before. So I do like Christian Rodriguez in this one here to kind of close the distance and land that boxing. Minus 210. Probably a little bit wide for my liking, honestly, but I do like him to win the fight. Not the highest confidence pick, though, because I still don't really love the idea of him at 145, but he's got no other option because he's missed weight so many times now at 135. Now, Gabriel Bonfim will be kind of having his big comeback fight against Ange Loosa, and I do think that he's going to win this one, and I believe the bookies really think he's going to win this one, because he is minus 400. I'm really disappointed that he lost against Dalby, you know, because I was really high on him. If you do know Gabriel Bonfim, he is an incredible grappler. But one thing that we haven't really seen showcased all that much in the UFC is his boxing background. He is a professional national boxing champion of Brazil. He had a boxing bout, a national level boxing bout in boxing in Brazil. That wasn't good English, but the point was still made anyway. He's got good striking to back up that grappling, which he's got as well, so he can mix it all up. And Ange Loosa, I think, is a pretty good fighter. You know, he's very well-rounded. He's got a good skill set. Went to war with Jack Della Maddalena on the Contender Series probably a couple of years ago now at this point. Then made his debut against Munir Laziz on short notice because it was just after he beat former UFC fighter John Howard. And then AJ Fletcher, that fight was at Elevation. And it was actually Ange Loosa that was able to out-survive an AJ Fletcher onslaught in round number 2. AJ Fletcher gassed out completely. Ange Loosa just kind of went to his wrestling in round number 3 to win that fight there after a bit of a war. But what really kind of does raise red flags for me, especially coming into this matchup and also potential other people as well, is the Bryan Battle fight where he was losing that fight against Bryan Battle, got eye-poked, couldn't continue, and then the fight was ruled a no contest, of course, and then he tried to fight Bryan Battle at the end. I don't really know, like, I guess just take the no contest and walk away with it, maybe try and reschedule the fight, even though you're losing, who knows. But he's got a tough fight here in Bonfim. Bonfim's got really good boxing. He's going to scrap it out with Ange Loosa, like he did against Munir Laziz. They scrapped it out. And he's got very opportunistic grappling, which can be scary, but against a guy like Ange Loosa, I think it will work as well. So I think we're going to see Gabriel Bonfim look good on the feet with the boxing and then work in some grappling as well. So I do like Bonfim to win by submission over Ange Loosa. But if the fight gets extended to round 2 or definitely round 3, Bonfim with his style could gas out at altitude, elevation, and Ange Loosa we've seen can push deep in elevation to try and steal a round at the end. So maybe things can get a little bit crazy. And now speaking of elevation, we've got Drew Dober fighting another short notice replacement fight here. There's a lot of short notice fights on this card, so be aware. Versus Gene Silva At 155 pounds, of course, because Drew Dober was originally meant to fight against somebody else, whose name has slipped my mind, Mike Davis. Mike Davis pulled out very weird messages on Instagram he posted on a story. War, banger, is the initial thought. And the first thing I thought when I saw this matchup announced was, damn, I don't really like it for Gene Silva. But I was away, so I had a couple of days to think about it. And then I really looked into it a little bit more, and I thought about it a little bit more. And I was like, oh, it's actually not that bad for Gene Silva. But I've gone back to the Drew Dober pick. I believe this fight is going to take place on the feet. Drew Dober's takedown defense is... I think I've personally overrated it quite a lot. I've always thought that he had really good takedown defense, and then he just gets taken down all the time. So maybe I've overrated his takedown defense. But I don't think Gene Silva's a guy that's going to be offensively wrestling against him. And what we have seen with Gene Silva in the past is that he can get caught with counter shots. Kevin Vallejos in round number 1 against Gene Silva looked really, really good, man. It looked really crispy. But then, of course, what happened? Gene Silva had the power. He landed the bombs on Vallejos and he was able to turn the fight around. The same thing, well, not really, happened against Weston Wilson. That was just a beat down. And then against Charles Jourdain, kind of same thing. You know, it was the power of Gene Silva that really got it done against Jourdain. And I feel like a little bit of an idiot picking Jourdain because, of course, that was my mistake. But now he's coming in here on short notice. He's just had a fight. Didn't really take any damage. But he's going to have to cut weights twice now. And that is a thing that we have learned a lot. Jack Della Maddalena had to cut weight multiple times. Fought against Basil Hafez on short notice. Looked really bad against Basil Hafez. And now has since looked good against other opponents like Gilbert Burns without having to cut weight twice. Chris Duncan had to cut weight twice in 1 week. And then he goes out there against Slava Borshev and gets knocked out. Looks really, really bad. But you could really kind of cut that up to him cutting weight so many times. And now we've got Gene Silva here cutting weight 2 times in 2 weeks. Missed weight at 145 pounds, so it would have been a tough weight cut, I'm assuming. Now coming back here at 155 pounds, not as bad of a weight cut because he's a big boy. He actually might be walking around at like 160, maybe a little bit more. Like, I think he might actually be cutting, he might be one of those guys that is cutting 15% of his body weight to make 145, if that maths out. So he is going to have to cut weight to make this matchup against Drew Dober. And although Drew Dober is not really going to be that much taller than him, not that much longer than him in reach, he's going to be a lot bigger than him because Drew Dober is a big boy. And he does have big power, he does have solid Muay Thai, he did knock out Bobby Green, and that's a good and well-aging win as well right now. Lost to Matt Frivola. Freakish power, you know, really kind of got that chin of Dober, which I've always thought was very solid. Lost to Moicano. I think that we're going to see Drew Dober go out there and beat Gene Silva. I feel like Gene Silva does have big power, and there's a very real chance that that power does translate here against Drew Dober, but it's going to be 2 guys here that are going to be fighting on the feet. I don't think Dober has to worry about takedowns in this fight. I think it's going to be striker versus striker. And I think that we're going to see Drew Dober kind of come out on top in what could be a war. And once again, this fight is at elevation. If Drew Dober has been really training for this fight, he would have been training at elevation for the last few weeks. He's had a training camp for this. Gene Silva hasn't. You know, he's taken this fight on short notice now, upper weight class. Drew Dober's known about the fight. Gene Silva has not. I like Drew Dober here, and he's actually the underdog. He is minus 102 as I record on Bet Online, but he's actually the favorite on some other sports books, so I'm just going to assume that it's even odds, and I'm siding with the Dober. And it'll be interesting to see this fight because we don't know how motivated Drew Dober truly is going to be for this one. Now, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Muslim Salikov is your co-main event. I'm just going to pick Santiago Ponzinibbio here. I just don't think Muslim Salikov really has it anymore. And now he's always been an older fighter in the UFC because, of course, he had this Kung Fu background. Competed at the Olympics, I believe, to my knowledge, but if not, is a multiple-time national champion and also has competed at the world level in Kung Fu. And I believe it would have been, is it Wushu? I believe it's under the name Wushu, which he competed, which is translated to Kung Fu, of course. But now it kind of seems like he's slowed down. I feel like it was actually that fight against Li Jingliang, which really kind of set it off. I actually did pick Li Jingliang to knock him out there, and it was kind of a little bit of an iffy pick at the time because Salikov was on a good win streak. And then he beats Andre Fialho in what was a really good performance because he landed like 3 spinning back kicks on Fialho's chin in a row. But then he lost to Dalby, who's a karate guy, got knocked out by Randy Brown, and that wasn't even really that long ago. It was about 5 months ago. Ponzinibbio, is going to want to strike with Salikov, so it's a good matchup for Salikov in that way because it is striker versus striker, but Ponzinibbio is a pretty good, solid boxer. We've seen that he does still have a lot of power. Had a very close fight with Mikhail Pereira, which a lot of people believe that Ponzinibbio actually probably should have won. And then he fought Alex Morono, and although he actually got dropped a couple of times against Alex Morono, showcased that he still can dig deep and landed a massive overhand right, which was one of the most brutal KOs, I guess, of the year in that one. Because Morono, like, his face changed shape before he hit the ground. It was a big one. He showcased the power, but then he did lose to Kevin Holland. He's been out for over a year now. Ponzinibbio is kind of one of those guys which, you know, if he didn't get that blood disease, you know, like, what could have happened to him? And then he come back against Li Jingyang. Bad matchup in hindsight because he got knocked out. But Ponzinibbio, I think in this one here, he's going to be able to close the distance. I think he's going to be able to land his strikes. If it does come down to the grappling, Ponzinibbio has showcased that he can grapple, he can wrestle if he needs to. And Salikov, I feel like, is probably just going to have to hang out on the feet and fight from range with his striking. So I do like Ponzinibbio here. I'm going to pick him to win. He's minus 200, which I guess, okay, is what it is. But I do like Ponzinibbio to win this one here. I think that he probably does knock out Musum Salikov because we have seen him land big power on tough fighters in the past. Alex Morono is not an easy guy to finish. And we saw Ponzinibbio really put him out in that matchup. Another main event is Rose Namajunas fighting Tracy Cortez on short notice. I am picking Rose Namajunas. My confidence in it does kind of decrease because Tracy Cortez really improved her striking. You know, she took a lot of time off, fought against Melissa Gatto, had to win that one with her control time in her wrestling, and then took about a year or so off. I guess maybe the situation with her splitting ways with Brian Ortega might have contributed to the time off, but you never know, she could have been injured, who knows. But in that period of time, she worked on her boxing a lot because her boxing looked really, really smooth and really, really crisp against Jasmine Jasudavicius, and I thought it actually looked great. I thought she looked like a very, very good striker, was able to piece up Jasmine Jasudavicius and mix in her wrestling as well, and we haven't really been able to see anyone do that to Jasmine, so that was a good performance for her. And with Rose Namajunas, it's kind of iffy with me because I'm like, I don't really like Rose at 125, you know? Because she fought at 115 pounds, is one of the better strawweights of all time. I believe she holds a win over every single woman strawweight champion there has ever been, of course, including Luana, Weili Zhang, Carla Esparza. Speaking of Carla Esparza, what happened here? And then she goes up to 125, and actually has a pretty competitive fight with Madame Fiorot. But in that fight, at 125 pounds, it doesn't really look like we've seen Rose Namajunas kind of like pack on like really like good weight, like good muscle, you know, and really kind of add a lot of power to her game. I guess if that makes any sense. The skill set's still there, but the size necessarily isn't really. But then she does go out there against Amanda Ribas, was able to showcase some very good striking, some offensive grappling as well. Was a close fight, was a bit of a war, but overall she did do a lot of damage to Ribas and was able to get into good positions on the ground. Tracy Cortez, I think, is going to be bigger than her, and I think would potentially have the opportunity with her high-level wrestling to go out there and actually land takedowns on Rose and actually kind of put Rose in some awkward positions on the ground and maybe bully her with her size. But once again, it kind of comes down to this elevation thing. Rose Namajunas has had a long time to prepare for this matchup at high altitude. She does have better striking, although Cortez has improved her boxing. Rose Namajunas has showcased very good kickboxing. Her grappling, I think that Rose Namajunas is the better pure grappler, even though she lost to Julian Robertson in like 40 seconds, 65 seconds. And in that fight, and like, I don't know, man, the thing about Rose is like a lot of it is mental game, and she doesn't really have the strongest mental game in the world, you know, and I guess there probably are a lot of external factors that do contribute to that. Because in that fight against Julian Robertson in the thing, she like didn't really care that she had lost so quickly. She just said, "Oh, I just wanted to see where I'm at, you know, see if I'm ready to come back." And I was like, you know, like, didn't really kind of give us a lot of inspiration there, Rose, I'll be honest. But I think she can go out there and beat Tracy Cortez, and if she beat Tracy Cortez and then someone else, she might be in the conversation for a title shot at 125, which would be cool to see. So yeah, I go with Namajunas, and I think that we are probably going to see Tracy Cortez slow down a lot towards the end. We haven't seen Tracy Cortez go 5 rounds. We have seen Rose go 5 rounds. We have also not really seen them both at elevation too much, I don't think, to my knowledge anyway. I like the fact that Rose has had the full camp. Rose is minus 220. I feel like if Cortez needs to win, she's going to need to find a finish, and Tracy Cortez isn't really someone I feel like you can rely to find a finish, especially over someone as high level as Namajunas, which is why I do like Namajunas to win this fight by decision, and probably based off round 3, 4, and 5 as well, in my opinion, because I think that Cortez is going to slow down, and those takedowns are not going to come so easy later on in the fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below of this card, of my picks. I do believe there's a chance that we might get another short notice fight added with Nazim Sadikov potentially being added to the card, but we'll see how it goes. I'll see you guys in the next one.